Game review.
Max Cooper. So you and I got a chance to sit down and check out Fairy Tale, thanks to the kind folk over at Turn Left Distribution. They sent it our way to Dash Gamer and to the Pop Cultures, respectively. So you and I thought we'd sit down and have a chat about the game and our experience so far, or at least what we've played. From my understanding, you have finished. You got credits last night, but you still haven't played the prologue.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
So what are your initial thoughts after essentially wrapping up its main campaign?
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed my time with it. As I said earlier, I have a love for this anime.
Yes.
My opinion can be, take it with a grain of salt. I have a fairy tale tattoo on my back.
Yeah.
So take that with a grain of salt as well.
You're biased.
The game was enjoyable,
Yep.
but over the course of the 40 hours it took me to complete, there were things that started to irk me a little bit.
Can I harbor a guess in to say that for me personally, I found there was a few gameplay elements that kind of seemed a little janky, and in terms of its actual fluidity, there was a little bit of frame rate issues I definitely had.
Yeah.
It seemed like one of those stock standard JRPGs we usually get from a Bandai Namco, but almost lesser than that, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, so if you obviously the developers Gust, they make the Atelier series.
Correct.
You could basically see it was just that game reskinned. It's the exact same formula, it seemed like it was running on the same engine.
Yep.
They had just reskinned the characters in.
Yeah.
Or reskinned the models in.
Correct, yeah. I feel like there was necessarily some tropes that were obviously lifted from Fairy Tail, the series itself, but like you said, its core gameplay was Atelier, and I feel like even playing some of the franchise from the past, and then having somewhat of a questionable experience within the Fairy Tail universe, I don't know what they gained in terms of actually wanting to implement the Fairy Tail universe, and basically what you said, reskinning it over an Atelier kind of style. I feel like almost that they lifted its blueprint, its foundation, and masked it with our favorite characters from this anime.
Yeah. It definitely seemed like what it was.
Oh yeah. So being a fan of Fairy Tail and other animes such as One Piece and all that stuff, how did you were you satisfied walking away from this?
So it's interesting. So as a fan, I did enjoy my time with the game. I can't deny that I didn't.
Yeah.
But over the course of, like I said, it took me 40 hours to complete. There were parts of it that started to unravel for me, and that kind of it felt unnecessary.
What did you find unnecessary about it?
So I think my biggest gripe with the game was the fact that all its side missions that were essentially the gates to get to the story mission were just glorified fetch quests.
Yep.
But you could only do one at a time.
Right.
So you couldn't just go, I'm going to grab all of the quests for this area and do them all at once and then come back. It was, no, you can only have one at a time.
Yeah.
So you were constantly going backwards and forwards to do essentially the same thing multiple times.
Kind of taking that traditional JRPG approach instead of actually integrating kind of like that Final Fantasy VII remastered approach that I noticed you were able to kind of achieve and complete multiple side quests at the same time. I did notice that during this, and I was like, that's a little bit outdated. I thought they would have gone past that by now.
Yeah.
How'd you find its overall battle system?
I enjoyed the battle system to begin with. I really enjoyed that tactical based, turn-based combat that it had.
Yeah.
So I described it similar to that of, Final Fantasy Tactics or Fire Emblem, but there's no movement. So there's a grid-based system, and all your attacks will hit certain squares on the grid.
Yep.
I found that interesting. It actually it made me put some thought into what I was doing during the combat to try and maximize my damage output and to minimize the resources spent.
Yeah.
So I found that the combat was probably the strongest part of this game.
What was the weakest?
Because of the fact that it is based on an anime,
Yeah.
the story was its weakest point.
I agree.
Because there was nothing new.
Yeah.
Like, we'd seen it before, and I think those who have no idea about this franchise coming in at the point that they start this game is very abrupt. From memory, it's like season 3 of the anime.
That's what I thought
so
too.
you're coming in with no background knowledge. It doesn't really introduce the characters. You're expected to know who these people are when you start this game.
Yeah. The appeal obviously is behind, selling it to established fans of the franchise itself and the series. Like, it's baffling because you would think that selling a video game like this they would try to market and, if anything, attract and allure a new audience into Fairy Tail, even though the series itself is, finished. But it's like, what would necessarily want or like garner a brand new audience to attract it to a series that's already been established and basically wrapped up, but at the same time introducing a new audience to it? Because at the same time you got to understand that, like, having that established core fan base is essentially what is going to sell this title. And then I found that going into this title myself, like, as somebody who has seen Fairy Tail and I love Fairy Tail, but at the same time, I was kind of baffled by the fact that they aren't attracting that new audience, aren't trying to persuade a fresh audience to come in and play this. But at the same time, I also understand why they did it. But its core mechanic gameplay, I did not appreciate. Like, I found that it had its problems in terms of the way you initiate a battle. It really set off this confusing structure of almost like a game of chess in a way. And I was very taken back by it because I love my JRPGs and I love a turn-based RPG, a traditional turn-based RPG, and I also love the freeform approach that games like Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy have now taken on board. So to kind of be locked onto this chessboard kind of approaching turn-based battle, there's something antiquated, there's something archaic about it, and I'm not for that anymore. I'm for more of that freeform style, if you know what I mean.
Do you think it would have worked better if they had have gone all in on that tactical style? So make it more similar to that of an XCOM or a Fire Emblem, where you have moving characters as well as certain hitboxes for your attacks? Or do you think they should have just shied away from that completely and just done a traditional, you just pick your target and it hits who it hits?
I think they could have even gone with both, like a choice of both, because Dragon Quest has done that now. And Dragon Quest has seen a lot of success in doing so. Like Dragon Quest 11, when they spun it, and you got Dragon Quest S now, which you jump into, and it's got the freeform approach, the tactical approach, and then the turn-based approach. You can either go traditional classic, which is not the traditional classic they went in Final Fantasy for some reason, and they listed as classic, but you can go classic, turn-based, and also freeform, which I preferred in Dragon Quest, which I would have preferred here, to be honest. I would have preferred this to be like an open adventure, if you know what I mean. Like, when you see the anime and everything else, you think of the pacing and how fast the anime and the narrative really is, and how solid it truly is. But that doesn't translate here. What translates here is, okay, we're going to stop and we're going to fight. You got to choose from a list and all this other. It's like, oh man, like traditional JRPGs just don't fit necessarily with every single adaptation in anime. And that's what I'm finding now. Like every single anime that comes out these days, we're getting this traditional turn-based RPG style. I'm just like, no.
I mean, I guess the only benefit to doing it this way is it allows you to control more than one character.
Yeah, I guess.
So it gives you the advantage to play as all the characters that you know and love, as opposed to just the main character or the main protagonist.
That I can understand.
And because we're constantly swapping between characters throughout this story, it does kind of make a little bit more sense to do it in a turn-based fashion.
Yeah.
As much as I would love an open adventure, as you were describing, that that game would have been fantastic, but being locked to one character, kind of, I could see why they would want to give players choice.
That's true.
Like even the simplicity of, you can control anyone in your party in the open or the open world areas. It just gives you that feeling of you're not stuck to one character constantly throughout the story.
What did you find? What did you find to be its weakness about its battle system?
The fact that it had an auto battle system.
Yeah.
The fact that you could just completely zone out, hit one button, and be like, okay, just do it.
Yeah.
And I must admit, I did that a lot for a lot of the fetch quests. It's like, go kill X amount of creatures in this area. I'm like, okay. I just set auto battle on and just kind of sit back.
It's essentially the Persona 5 skip feature.
Yeah, it completely removes you from the game.
Yeah.
And you just lose all focus to what you're doing.
Did you find it? Did you find its magic system to be a little convoluted at times? Because I found like there were certain points. Actually, convoluted might be the wrong word. I think its magic system, its mana system, tended to be a little. Oh man, what's the word I'm looking for? Obtuse. I think it like there was certain elements that I found that there were a lot more of, than there were a lot less of in terms of like variety. And I was like, oh man, like every single battle I'm going to be using the same kit of mana here.
Yeah, well, I did the same thing. I generally, most of the time used the same attack over and over and over again to get the job done.
Yeah, spam.
You pick the highest damage at the mediocrest cost of mana.
Do you think that? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that was pretty much it.
Yeah.
Like you pick what's going to get the job done with the least cost.
Do you think that that spells something for its lack of strategy though?
Yeah, because it got to the point where eventually, with certain characters, you could hit all the tiles at once anyway.
Yep.
And then nothing else mattered.
Yeah. I got that up, like as soon as you said that, I got footage up on screen right now as it's playing for us. And yeah, it did exactly that. Essentially what happens is about maybe halfway to 3/4 of the way of the game in, you get to a certain level that you become almost unstoppable. And it really became mundane. After that, it was like, okay, here we go, another battle, beep, beep, beep. And then...
I mean, especially with their awaken system, because, it lets you essentially power up and you get free health and mana every turn.
Yeah.
And if you were about to die from it, but you could awaken, you could negate all damage of that attack and it was just your turn and you were back on full health. So it was very forgiving as well. There seemed to be no... What's the word I'm looking for? No downside to if you were playing bad, there was always an escape for you, something to come in to save the day.
How did you find its narrative?
I found it was odd that half of it was voice acted and half of it wasn't.
Yeah.
I kind of wish it was all voice acted.
Same.
But again, like I said, because it's a known story that I've seen before, it was kind of like just going through the motions again.
What well, first of all, I should ask, are you sub or dub guy?
I'm a sub.
Okay.
Japanese voice acting.
So you would have appreciated this more than what I did. That's for sure.
Very much so.
Yeah. I'm a dub guy, admittedly. Filthy dub guys. But it's just one of those things where I prefer to have, like, if there is an English dub cast for a certain Japanese animation or a show, whether that be a show or film, I do prefer to have them voice also in other adaptations. I can understand why they're absent because of cost, localization, and all this other stuff that comes into play. Also, the actors themselves not having time to actually voice their characters in other adaptations too. But I feel like if people are like going into this and expecting the English voice cast, they're absent, doesn't exist. It's completely Japanese. I think there's going to be more of an appreciation of the fact that there is the Japanese voice actors present with subs there for people, because it'll be the authentic experience, I guess, for some. For me personally, it kind of took away from that experience. I feel like, when you were younger and you played JRPGs on like a Nintendo DS and like they were fully Japanese, like it was full Japanese voiced or whatever, in the 3DS I should say, and then you had the dialogue at the bottom, or even just like a Phoenix Wright title, and the Phoenix Wright title at the bottom, the dialogue comes up. That's how I feel when a Japanese, a fully Japanese voiced game comes up with just worded dialogue at the bottom. I feel like I'm reading a game instead of actually experiencing it, and it takes me away from being encapsulated or engrossed. And it's not to say that there are some amazing animes out there that are, you know, exclusively Japanese voiced, and you can't get them dubbed. But Fairy Tail was one that I really appreciated when they localized it, and it was just a bit of a shame that they never really localized the game with it either. But you know, it's one of those things where even I feel like playing this game, and then I go back to One Piece, like the gaming franchise. This has it over the One Piece gaming franchise for sure. I feel like have you ever played the One Piece gaming franchise?
No, so the only other anime franchise I played the Attack on Titan game, and I've played all the Naruto Shippuden fighting games.
What would you say compares to these?
It's hard to compare a fighting game to an RPG, but I think the Shippuden games probably outclass this.
Yeah. Shippuden games are really popular, so I can understand that. But yeah,
and being a fighting game, it's easier for them to onboard new people.
Yeah.
They're not kind of telling a story.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Whereas this is definitely trying to recreate the same story, just at an interesting start point.
How did you feel about its graphical design? Because I got a couple of things I want to say about that.
So, they were almost there.
Okay.
There was just something that was just off, and it was really noticeable. And I can't quite put my finger on what it was, because as a whole, it was definitely them. Like you recognized everyone straight away.
Yeah.
But when they kind of focused in on them, there was just slight odd differences.
Yes.
It was like, you're not who you're supposed to be, but from far away you are.
Yeah.
It's kind of like I described it as like they're doppelgangers.
Yes.
They're almost there, but they're not quite.
Do you feel like it's because of their like we're experiencing them in like a 3D model, and it kind of seemed a little bit off for like the first time? Yeah. I feel so for me, I thought that the character models were okay. Like I thought there were some tendencies where it just seemed like they weren't them, and they were like the odd doppelgangers of themselves. But you know, that was to be expected, as we've seen in a lot of adaptations from animated gaming. I feel almost though its overall level design and terrain design and its graphical fidelity lacked hardcore. And I say that because it looked like a PlayStation 3 game.
I can agree with that.
It looked smudged and stretched. Like some of the textures and the texture pop in and the frame rate and the model, like like even just the housing design that I got on the screen right now, there was nothing that made me go, wow, they really nailed it with the surroundings. No, they didn't. It's rough. It was really rough to look at, really plain. It's almost like that borderline template that they use in a lot of anime adaptations in gaming, where they have a nice clear blue sky with realistic clouds and everything, and then it kind of that fills up its experience to be a little bit more realistic. But then its surroundings are always plain and dull and outdated. But you know, that's one aspect of it. Obviously, you know, we're in it to basically experience the turn-based combat and the battle and everything. So I guess that's okay. What in terms of characters and everything, did you feel like they nailed their beats and everything?
To a degree, most of the main characters obviously got more love than what the secondary characters did.
Yeah.
A lot of their story quests kind of seemed, so you know, some of them were quite silly.
Yeah.
Some of them fit the profile quite well.
Yeah.
All in all, yeah, I think they focused more on the main cast that everyone would recognize more and that everyone would want to play as during the game, as opposed to the B tier characters.
Yeah. I agree with you.
I guess is to be expected.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. Max, usually I don't know if Betson does this, but I usually ask for a score. If off the top of your head, if you would give it an out of 10, what would it be?
See, I hate giving numbers. Because,
I know, everybody does.
So I would probably give this a 6.
Okay.
Like, again, I have a love for this franchise.
Yeah.
So take that. And I did enjoy my time with this game.
Yeah.
And I really did enjoy the combat. But story-wise, graphic fidelity-wise, I know a lot of the bugs that I did have issues with.
Yeah.
They will be. I've seen the day one patch.
Yep.
It does look like they're going to be fixed.
It is a long list.
It is a very long list.
Yeah. Yeah.
But as it stands, if you're a fan of this game, I can see that people would enjoy it.
Yeah.
It's a 6.
Yeah.
The game generally works.
I'm giving it a 7.5 in my written review that's going live with this video on YouTube, as well as it's going to be on the podcast the following Monday. But I'm giving it a 7.5. I think that I liked the game. I really did. I enjoyed my time with it, but I feel almost like it was too long for what it was worth. I feel like if they wrapped it... What, is you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to ask, do you think that it is too long purely because they gate out the main story quests by putting in that arbitrary guild ranking that you have to do those side quests to up?
It's bottleneck.
Yeah.
Yeah. Completely bottleneck. There are those, like you said, those arbitrary side quests. I just feel like they were there to be there. And
yeah. It's like they wanted their game to be 30 hours and when we don't have 30 hours worth of story, so we're just going to put all this stuff in that you have to do to progress.
I'm not interested in that. Don't force that kind of, like, it wasn't forced, I know, but it was almost like, oh, it's there and it magnetizes you to do it, and it's like,
well, I mean, to a degree it kind of was forced because you had to do them to up your guild ranking because doing the main story quests didn't do that. No,
that's right. Look, I feel like 7.5 I think is going to be a fair score to it. It had its problems, as you said. Look, graphically it was poor. Gameplay wise, I feel like it was firm. It wasn't solid enough for me to say, oh yeah, I had fun in every battle. Like you mentioned, you were like, auto play, auto skip, play, quick, get through this.
I must admit, I only did that for the side quests. For every main story quest that I was doing, I was hands-on. I was doing everything that needed to be done. But for those, kill X of these guys, it was couldn't be bothered.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that became cumbersome and mundane. Like, what was the point? So I agree with you. I just feel like it could have been a little better for what it was, though. Still an enjoyable experience for those who actually like Fairy Tail, the franchise in its own. So that'll be it. Max, where can the fine people find you?
You can check me out on the Pop Culturist Facebook page, YouTube, or at BePossessed101 on Twitter.
Correct. Then you can also check Max out on For the Players, the Pop Culturist PlayStation podcast with co-host Ryan Betson. So there you go. Thanks for joining me, Max, and reviewing.
Not a problem. Thank you for having me.
No problem, man.